Okay, so welcome everybody to our monthly PD session. This month we're going to focus on the upcoming Spread the Word Inclusion Day, which is the first Wednesday in March, associated resources with that, as well as some of the stuff that we've crafted just within Special Olympics New York that might be of interest in supporting activation around Spread the Word inclusion. So we have a bunch of fun stuff to cover. And so Jess, if you advance to the next slide. We wanted to kick the session off with just a little bit of understanding of why do we even bother with things like Spread the Word inclusion, with Choose to Include, with this idea of whole school engagement. So for those who've participated or coached or been part of unified sports teams, you guys know the impact that that has on both athletes and partners, and really when other students or family members come to those games, the experience that they get from it. So we know that unified sports is very impactful. Many of you obviously double as an inclusive youth leadership club advisor, a YAC advisor, or you're mentoring and leading these students who are bringing inclusion to your schools. We know from things that you've shared, from college essays to testimonials, about the impact, again, that has on both students with and without disabilities, being empowered to lead and having a focus of creating this inclusive school climate really brings out the best in them and develops them as leaders, not for the future, but leaders in this moment right now. Those are two of the three components of Unified Champion Schools. And the one we're focused on today and Spread the Word focuses on is whole school engagement, which is the third. Whole school engagement is really a catch-all. To me, in my mind, I see unified sports and inclusive youth leadership being the two drivers of whole school engagement. So I really see it as a byproduct of this programming. So whole school engagement activities positively impact school climate by including all students, teachers, staff, administrators. In an inclusive school climate that fosters understanding and respect for all can influence how students think and act within and beyond the school. So really it's about having impact on each and every student. So it's about that catch-all opportunity or that touch point that can be open and accessible for a student despite their ability to jump in and commit fully to a club or a team or anything like that. So those school-wide opportunities focus on social inclusion, raise awareness, and create an educational environment where respect and acceptance are the norm and all students feel included and engaged. This welcoming community cultivates a positive school climate and enhances other school-wide efforts. So, and those activities, whole school engagement activities really offer a platform to demonstrate the power of young people to positively impact their school community by promoting social inclusion. So any of you who I've had the pleasure of having conversations will know that I will constantly champion the idea that this Unified Champion Schools format is really meant to be centered in student leadership. It really is about the students driving it. It's about the students planning the activities. You as advisors, you as coaches are tremendously important to that movement. But just like your job as an educator is to empower a student to take responsibility for their own learning, their own education, their own development, that is also the case with Unified Champion Schools. You're building those kids up. So I'm going to hand it over to Jess to jump into Spread the Word, but excited to have everybody here.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you everybody for jumping on today and taking the time to maybe learn a few new things about Spread the Word inclusion. I think that most of you on the call are probably familiar with this campaign through your pledge tables and our awareness campaigns usually hosted at Unified Champion Schools. But for those of you maybe on the recording or maybe on the call who haven't been a part of this initiative before, Special Olympics International and Best Buddies, and in an effort to activate our Unified Champion Schools, partner together to create this Spread the Word Inclusion Day on March 3rd. So it's really about raising awareness for everything that we're doing and creating an inclusive community. So we're going to talk a little bit about Spread the Word Inclusion, how we can get involved specifically in 2021. We have a campaign for Special Olympics New York, specifically for our Unified Champion schools to get involved in a virtual setting, and how you guys as educators can stay involved and maybe get more involved in this specific campaign leading up to March 3rd. So as I said, this initiative is focused on pledging inclusion through action. So it's not just about going onto the website and taking the pledge, although that's usually the main ask through our campaign, but it's more than that. Specifically for educators, we have 3 main calls to action in addition to signing the pledge, and they're creating an inclusive space, being a mentor, and hosting a virtual campaign within your district. So everyone on this call, I'm sure, has experience with all of these activations, with the exception of maybe hosting a virtual campaign. We might not have done that before. And I venture to guess that the majority of you have been involved with this initiative in the past through these actions, whether you've been aware of it or not. So I'll start by talking about creating inclusive spaces. When we talk about unified engagement, usually people's minds involuntarily go to the basketball or bowling team at their school. But what we're asking through creating inclusive spaces is much bigger than that. We're talking about creating inclusive spaces throughout the entire school climate. And a unified sports team is a great starting point, but what we typically see is that engagement between students with and without intellectual disabilities really transitions into other clubs, into the hallways, pep rallies, lunch, PE, and even outside of the school. So it's important to make sure that every aspect of your school community is ready to accept this transition and support our unified activity. A recent study actually done by Special Olympics International dove into the impact of Special Olympics programming, specifically unified programming, on attitude of those involved. And I'd be happy to give you all of the stats and all of the report, but I'm just going to share a couple with you now. So one of their key findings was that after playing on a unified team, 79% of partners or individuals without intellectual disabilities reported that they had an increased understanding of their peers with intellectual disabilities. And in addition to that, by playing on the team, over 50% said that they were challenged through their training. They experienced an increase in their sports skills and physical fitness, and even more impactful, both athletes and partners reported that they experienced an increase in their self-esteem. So I think we've all probably seen this on the basketball court and in the bowling lanes. But what I want you guys to think about is, what about in our PE classes, in fitness clubs, in group projects, in open conversations, and education and the meaning and impact of inclusion? Obviously, right now, COVID is challenging these ideas, but ideally, we'd be able to see these impacts in the student body and overall school climate through creating these inclusive spaces. Our next call to action for educators is being a mentor. Now, I know most people on this call fulfill this role, so I won't get into all the ways that our students are impacted by your lead, but through Unified and our youth activation committees and Special Olympics clubs, we activate young leaders to speak and create change that can only be further reaching with your support and facilitation, specifically in encouraging students to engage fellow students and creating a network that extends beyond their unified teams and beyond their youth activation committees. So by being a mentor, we really ask that when you identify these young leaders, which is a pillar of unified sports, as you identify these leaders, really encouraging them to reach out and reach the full student body and helping them in any way that they need to spread this message of inclusion. Our final call to action, maybe the most difficult one in the sense that it takes some organization, is to be hosting a virtual campaign. So what we're going to get a little bit more in detail about later in this presentation is our Choose to Include Special Olympics New York campaign. So obviously COVID-19 has made it difficult to spread our message of inclusion, but it hasn't been lost, and we're prepared to go virtual and potentially reach a larger population than we could have in person. So we'd like to encourage our Unified Champion schools to organize a virtual campaign using Spread the Word resources and our Choose to Include kits that you might have heard about in an earlier PD session at the end of last year. So here are some of the resources that I want. These are definitely not all of the resources, but some of the resources that we have for the Spread the Word inclusion initiative. A lot of these are social media engagement tools like the I am a teacher, I am a student, and I am a leader frames that you're going to see on the bottom of the screen, as well as the connection bingo on the top of the screen. And what I want to emphasize is that this is a campaign that anyone can get involved can get involved with. Anyone in your students, in your lives, your community members, family, friends, anybody can get involved with this campaign. And that's who we really want to reach, is the entire community, which is why Special Olympics New York is also hosting a Choose to Include campaign using the Choose to Include kits that we had promoted at the end of last year. So now I'm going to hand it over to Kyle Walsh to talk about those Choose to Include kits a little bit more.
All right, thanks, Jess. That was great. So yeah, we're gonna kind of remind everyone about this campaign. It's ongoing. Early on in the pandemic, we knew that we had to create something that could potentially be, it had to be versatile. It had to be something that could be used either virtually or in a school that could kind of continue to help students lead their school in the movement of inclusion and kind of promoting the idea of inclusion. So what we created was the Choose to Include kit and campaign. The way it works is we would provide your school with a number of different resources that all kind of center around the use of the logo in the bottom right corner here that comes to you in black and white. And it's asking a student to tell the world why they choose to include. So I, Kyle, choose to include because it makes my school a better place. And then gives that student also the opportunity to kind of design and make that logo their own. So what we would send to the school, Jess, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So what comes in the kit is a couple of shirts for all of the students that are organizing that. So it looks kind of like a nice uniform. And that would be for, if you're able to offer something in person. Also a stack of the logos on cardstock that you could, have students design those any way they want, write their Choose to Include pledge. And this is something that, you could put up all over the walls in the hallways, on lockers, and kind of decorate your school as a part of the campaign. Additionally, we'll send you some markers to help you design those, and some fabric markers that the students that are organizing it can design and make those shirts their own. So if it was something that needed to be virtual, we would also send you, the nice JPEG, usable JPEG of that logo. And this QR code actually links directly to a survey that allows students to pledge online. So we'll send you plenty of copies of that QR code and also have it sent to you digitally, so that's something that you could share via social media, out in an email communication, anything like that. And we'll also send you a facilitator's guide for the inclusion tiles to be used with the Choose to Include campaign. And so, as you're planning out your campaigns for this year, just ask that you consider to make this a part of it. If you want to get yourself a kit, I'm going to send the link into the chat here. And Jess, if you can go to the next screen, please. So you're going to request your kit. You can yourself request one, or have one of your student leaders go to that link and fill out that form. We're trying to send one per school, and then really give it to the students to put it into their hands. As Nate was saying, we want everything to be student-driven, student-led, and have you help facilitate that as best as you can. And then promote the event any way that you can. We know it's difficult right now, but we feel as though, if we've made this versatile enough that hopefully it can be used in any avenue, and can, lends itself well to creativity. That's what's going to make it fun. So enjoy.
Absolutely. And then just to emphasize what Kyle said, we have additional resources. So we have our Choose to Include kit, which is Special Olympics New York's specific way that we think we can engage people in this campaign. But through the Spread the Word website, which we'll share out after this presentation, there are plenty of resources, everything from social media resources and graphics to educator guides, student guides, and how to start these conversations and really get your entire school and your entire community involved in the Spread the Word inclusion initiative. So keep an eye out for the email to follow this presentation. That'll also have the recording in it, because that's where you're going to find all these resources that you can use.